What is up, football fans? You hear the voice of college football, SEC. The Alabama Crimson Tide knock off the Ole Miss Rebels 42-21 in Tuscaloosa. Leave your thoughts, reactions, comments of the game below. Let me mute my phone, make sure. Just wanted to test audio here a little bit. My name is Zach Ramilius. I'll be here for as long as you guys want me to hear. As the Crimson Tide beat the Ole Miss Rebels in a big game, and we talked about it last week over at the Alabama football channel. Pull up some stuff. And it was an important game because we had talked about how Alabama hadn't looked like the flying death machine we're all used to recently. You know, we talked about Mercer. There wasn't the explosive running game. Florida, there wasn't the explosive running game. It showed up against Southern Miss, but it was Southern Miss. So we're all a little bit nervous about that one. Today, they didn't get the explosive running game going. But man, was Brian Robinson awesome. And it was clear what Alabama's plan was. Hold on to the ball. Do not give Matt Corral opportunity after opportunity to get rolling. Don't let that offense led by Lane Kiffin get into a rhythm. And you're going to win a lot of games. And you're going to win a lot of games against Lane Kiffin. Of course, you're going to win a lot of games. You're Alabama. They held the ball for 38 minutes. And Brian Robinson, 33 carries, 171 yards. We've been waiting for a big boy performance from him all year. He was out last week against Southern Miss, and there it was. Only about 5 yards a carry, which isn't spectacular. No one's going to think that that's something incredible. But what he was doing all day was getting 5 yards, getting 6 yards, getting 4 yards even, setting up Bryce Young in manageable situations, the offense in manageable situations. Jason McClellan only got 6 carries. Roydo Williams only got 3 carries. It was the Brian Robinson Jr. show, and he was excellent. It was excellent. Leave your comments and reactions below. Jet Mech. Bama's defense was good for 3 quarters. I thought they were in trouble. The first drive, when Ole Miss was driving down the field, and that's how we had heard it talked about, and I talked about this last week too. Ole Miss wasn't going to go into Tuscaloosa and win unless Matt Corral was really good, and he was fine. Like he didn't turn the ball over like he's prone to, especially in the LSU and Arkansas last year. But what he didn't do was have the explosive plays to his wide receivers. They had the one really nice catch down the sideline by Sanders, I believe it was. Chase Rogers had a 142-yard catch, but other than that, he was kept in check. And Ole Miss was going to need those explosive plays, and they were going to need to go for it on 4th down. You're not going to walk into Tuscaloosa and win punting, kicking field goals. This isn't 2011 or 2000 whatever. This is a new offense, a new system. And what it does, though, is it lends credence that you're going to get blown out if you don't get those 4th downs. And for a while there, it looked like this might be worse than what we thought the final score was. For a while, it looked pretty like, oh, boy, this could be what we saw in Columbia, Missouri today between the Tennessee and Mizzou. So, you know, Ole Miss defense played well at times. But basically what I don't know if you're an Alabama fan, what you can be really mad at today. But leave your comments and reactions. There are things to talk about. This is a huge game. Alabama, their second win in the SEC. Play the Ole Miss stats. You can see Matt Corral, 21-29, 213 yards and a touchdown. He didn't make any boneheaded plays, but he wasn't able. Alabama pass rush was getting to him. He didn't take many sacks, but he's had to get rid of the ball quick, and it just was not what Ole Miss or Lane Kiffin really wanted. What hurt them, too, is the running game couldn't get going. Jerrion Ely, 9 carries for 16 yards. He was held in check. Henry Parrish got going a little bit later in the game, but by the time he got going, the game was over. So just an absolute beatdown from start to finish by the Crimson Tide. And once that first drive for Ole Miss got going, 16 plays, 59 yards, and they came up with nothing. Nothing. When they didn't get any points, they converted, 2 fourth downs that drive? 4th and 3 to Henry Parrish. 4th and 2 to Henry Parrish. This is after the amazing catch by Braylon Sanders, which even I'm sitting there going, you can't not score here. Like, that catch was incredible. Maybe the catch of the year. And then they get another 4th down conversion. They're at the 15-yard line. Get to 4th and 1. They run Jerry on Ely. And nothing. And as soon as that happened, you feel deflated. And then Alabama went down the field in 13 plays, 94 yards. And then another turnover on downs. Another touchdown drive for Alabama. And all of a sudden, it's 14-0. And you're starting to get in panic mode. Agreed. They and with the way Saban recruits, that's going to happen more often than not. That's just how the world works. You need to have a clever scheme, which Ole Miss does. And I don't think anybody here is just going to start ragging on Lane Kiffin. I think Lane has a good scheme, and I think he's doing a great job. But when playing on the road, and that Alabama crowd was good today. They were really good. They've been waiting so long for a team to come in there that could compete, and they got one today. Well, they thought. And it didn't work out that way. And Alabama rolls. Lane will get criticized. Yeah, he will. You have to, like we talked about, Matt Corral had to be great because unless you're 2019 Bo Nix, unless you're excellent, you're not going to beat the Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa, and you have to take those chances on 4th down. You just do. You're not going to win by kicking field goals and punting and playing the field position game. You're just not. And it burned them. It's going to, when you play like that, you're more likely to get blown out because you're going to give some short fields up. You're going to give, team short fields. And you're going to lose some momentum, especially if you don't convert a couple 4th downs. But you're not going to win punting the ball and kicking a field goal against Alabama. But give your thoughts and reactions below to this game as the Crimson Tide at home knock off Ole Miss 42-21. You hear at the voice of college football, SEC. And you can also see me at the voice of college football, Alabama, Mark Rogers TV. I want to thank Mark for letting us do this. Having a lot of fun. Have some fun here tonight. Keep leaving your comments and your thoughts on this game. What stood out to me, though, today was Alabama's tackling. Lane Kiffin's scheme is to get guys in space, get guys with I can't think of the word, and that's going to kill me. But get guys in space, get guys with some ability to get outside, get some running lanes, and get the big play. Alabama was not having that. Linebackers were excellent today. The corners were excellent today. The defensive line was pretty good today. They didn't get the sacks, but Ole Miss is getting rid of the ball quick, which is what they're going to do because they know even when they have good offensive lines or great even offensive lines, they're not going to be able to hold the fort against Alabama play after play after play after play. And Alabama was just there to tackle. That's why you see, 21 of 29 for Matt Corral. That's over a 70% completion percentage, which is pretty good. 7.3 yards completion. But nothing big happened. And when that happens, Ole Miss is not going to be able to go with the talent deficiency down the field like Alabama was, especially on like that first drive for the Crimson Tide. Ole Miss can't do that against Alabama. They're not there yet. They need big plays. They need mistakes. But what we are learning too is this is a much, much better Alabama defense than it was last year. so much better. Um, Last year, I think everyone was kind of rightfully disappointed by this team's defense. Ole Miss had got lit up, especially early in the season. As the season progressed, it looked pretty good. But this defense, I think we're back to a typical good Alabama defense. And I think it's about the right time for it to become that. Because if you remember in 2019, everybody got hurt. Everybody, especially in the linebacking core for the Crimson Tide, everybody got hurt. They're starting a bunch of freshmen. And then 2020 came around, they were sophomores, and they got better as the year went by, especially in the playoff. But when we finally got fourth and goal for Stanford against Oregon, incomplete pass, but pass interference. But when we got to the playoff, the defense really started to show out, and now it's getting better and better, and it's becoming more of an Alabama defense. I don't think it's Georgia's defense, because Georgia's defense, you can check out our earlier show about our Georgia-Arkansas recap if you want to hear straight gushing about that defense. But we can talk about that later too, because that was an incredible performance today. But Alabama against a really, really good offensive team. Matt Corral might be in New York for the Heisman. At this point, I don't know who's going to be in New York for the Heisman. I think Bryce Young will be there, but Bryce Young hasn't been. And Alabama fans and Ole Miss fans, chime in if you agree. I don't think anybody's like, "Oh, holy cow, Bryce Young today." He was fine. He was fine. Touchdown Stanford. He was fine, but he wasn't great. And he didn't need to be great because he was getting short fields, and Brian Robinson and the running game was just awesome. Bama and Georgia are on a collision course. Yeah, it kind of seems that way for not only an SEC championship, but a national championship. It's pretty painfully obvious that those two teams are such a cut ahead of everybody. Like the number 3 team right now is playing Stanford, and Stanford's about to kick an extra point or go for 2 with no time left on the clock. Hold on one second, see if this is good. This is implication, and Stanford and Oregon are going to overtime. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think these two teams are so far and away the best teams in the country. Everyone wants to talk about like this is a 2007 year, and it very may well be. But what people neglect to mention about 2007 quite often is, yeah, Boston College was a cool story. Kansas was a cool story. Mizzou was a great story. Who else? South Florida. All these teams were just West Virginia. It was just crazy upsets every week. Roller coaster ride of emotions. We ended the year with LSU and Ohio State in the national championship game. 2 powers in the national championship game. Oh, they'd beat him by more than 4 touchdowns. Stanford's a well-coached team. They always are, but they would. That's what we were just talking about. And Alabama and Georgia are going to probably play in the SEC title game. Florida may have something this weeks or like a month, but I'm pretty certain that it's going to be them two come January in the national title game. They're so far and above everybody else. There's some nice stories out there if you're just watching in the wider realm of college football. Cincinnati going into Notre Dame today. That was awesome. Good for them. Penn State looks to be pretty good. Sean Clifford is off to a really nice start, and they still have a couple tough games. Michigan looks better, and if you're, that coaching staff, if you're not going to do it this year, then when are you going to do it? Especially winning in Madison, which they haven't done in a while. But it does look like these two teams are just so far and ahead of everybody else. There was a lot of parity that year, and we ended with the 2 teams that everybody pretty much kind of agreed were the best teams. Even when like Boston College was getting a number 1 or Missouri was getting the number 1. Agreed. They're not. What I think will end up happening is hypothetical. Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship. As long as both are undefeated at that point, Alabama would get the 1 seed. Georgia would get the 3, because I don't think the College Football Playoff Committee would bump, even if like they have like an undefeated Cincinnati team, they would bump them all the way to 4, and we'd get a rematch the next game in the semifinals. So I think they kind of did that last year with Clemson and Notre Dame, where Clemson got and Notre Dame got the 4 or the 3 or what. And Notre Dame got the 4, Clemson got the 2 or 3. That doesn't matter. It's just what jersey you wear. But yeah, I completely agree. These teams will both be in the playoff, provided they run the table. If Alabama has a weird loss to Texas A&M next week, and we can talk about that game later, then obviously we're having a different conversation. But I think you can almost pencil in these two teams for the playoff, whether it be, one will go one place, one will go the other place. And we could very easily see them matching up in the national championship game. Any more thoughts and comments about this game? Ole Miss losing at home or Ole Miss losing on the road in Alabama, 42-21. It was just, from the get-go, after that first drive, it was just a butt kicking from Alabama for quite some time. I mean, they led 42-7 at one point. Ole Miss scored on their last 2 drives. Bryce Young did throw kind of an ugly pick there, but not much to complain about. I mean, it's 35-0 in the third quarter. Brian Robinson, today's MVP. I don't think there's any questions about that. If you disagree with me, leave a comment. You could say MVP was the defense, but I'll say the defense probably won MVP because Brian Robinson, 171 yards on 33 carries, and let Alabama possess the ball for 38 minutes. May I have any injuries? That's a good question. Let me look on Twitter real quick. Mr. Cecil Hurt, don't want to be disrespectful. He always seems to be in tune. Jace McClellan had an knee injury. I do remember him leaving, obviously. Initial report, not good. So that may explain why he didn't get a ton of carries. My audio was being weird on CBS today, just for clarity, so I didn't get to hear Danielson and Brad Nessler talk a lot. So if I probably did just miss that because the CBS doesn't work on my TV too well, so I have to Chromecast it. So my audio was a little note at the end of the game. Lane Kiffin in his presser noted that Brian Robinson was still in there at the end. I think it might have been a little bit of a shot by Lane, but you could tell he was testy in the pregame when he threw the CBS mic or whatever, and he was just like, "Get your popcorn," which the props, the art and makeup department or art and props department that Alabama has in Bryant Denny is incredible because the mascot was wearing popcorn after the game, which is hilarious. Heard anything? Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to take something weird happening, like Bryce Young throwing 3 picks or something stupid. Or it's going to take Texas A&M getting a pick 6, fumble return for a touchdown, kickoff. It's weird touchdowns outside of the offense, and it might take multiple. But yeah, no, I don't think the A&M offense is going to put up any sort of, especially after the performance we saw today. And I think part of the reason we saw the performance today, like I've mentioned, is the running game was so dominant, time of possession was so dominant that Matt Corral and that offense just didn't have any time to get into a real rhythm. And I think you could see more of the same, but I don't think you have to because I don't think anybody's scared of that Texas A&M offense. But just, a dominant performance. We'll hear more about Jace McClellan as time goes on. But hopefully he's okay. But if not, we know Brian Robinson can handle that load and be just a powerful, powerful back. And it was important to keep Jerrion Ealy in check. I mean, against Tulane, 15 carries for 103 yards. He was excellent in that, doing whatever Ole Miss wanted to do offensively. And he's a big piece of that offense, not just in the running game, but in the passing game too. Leave your comments and questions below. You have to excuse my grimacing. I went to a doctor yesterday. Learned I tore some stuff in my hammy or my quad. Yeah, my hammy. That's the back. I didn't not pass science for a reason. So I'm on some pain meds, and it's not a lot of fun. But what else impressed you about this Alabama game today? I think this was just one of those performances that you see from Alabama where offense, defense, special teams. Okay, sometimes not special teams. But one of those performances that was just dominant. They did whatever they wanted to offensively. They did whatever they wanted defensively up until the end. Of course, Ole Miss scored 3 touchdowns towards the end there to make the score appear closer than it was. But it was just, the performance from Alabama we've been waiting all year for. They were pretty good against Miami. We thought that might be a big performance, but as we've come to find out, Miami's just not that good. If you were here a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the Mercer game, we talked about the Mercer game. We talked about some issues with the offense coming out of that game, especially the run game. Florida game, I think we're just going to learn that Florida's a really good team, guys. I really do. I think we're just going to find out. Depending on what they do in Lexington tonight, I think we're just going to be like, okay, you went on the road in a kid's first start, and you won, and you beat a top 10-ish Florida team. And then against Southern Miss, the run game really got going. And they were dominant, but it's Southern Miss. Like, if you're not dominant, there's probably some bigger issues at hand here. It seems inefficient. It's not. You lose, and I know Jalen Waddle missed a healthy chunk of last year. But you lose him, Najee Harris, Mac Jones, who was very efficient, and the Heisman Trophy winner. No, you're not going to be as explosive. You're going to be younger, and you're going to be less experienced. But here's the thing, too. You have time to gauge this offense. The guy noted earlier, Texas A&M is not putting up 30 against this Crimson Tide team. So you have some time. Are you really that worried about Tennessee? And I know their offense looked great today. But Alabama fans, I don't think, are that worried about Tennessee, LSU, Auburn. There's time to work out the kinks. Because really, it does seem like Jamie Williams is the only big play guy on this offense. Mechie seems more like a possession guy, and he's fine at that. Bama has to clean up their tackling. Yeah, okay. We can talk about the tackling a little bit. First guy missing a lot of tackles. I did notice that a little bit. But what I will say is they did a great job of getting to the ball and bring him down. When you're playing Ole Miss and their longest play, they had 142-yard gain in the passing game. But other than that, an 18-yard, a 17-yard, that was towards the end of the game. 10 yards was their longest rush. When you're not giving up those big plays against Lane Kiffin and his schemes, that usually means you played pretty good defense and your tackling was okay. I think the defense is getting better. I think it's going to be – you're never – with the way college football is going, you're not going to see many 10-7 games in between two good teams. I know Georgia-Clemson was that, but Clemson might not be that good of a team. So center to QB hiking has to get better. Yeah, and that's just one of those things I think with time. Bryce Young's still young. No pun intended. I think everything will be okay with the Crimson Tide as and Georgia are on a collision course. I mean, just look at the big thing. Why did Ole Miss's offense struggle for 3 quarters? Look at that rushing yards, 210 to 78. And they only averaged 4.2 yards a carry. Now the running backs average 4.8, 4.7, and Roydell Williams average 5. When you take away Bryce Young's numbers, it's a little higher than that. There weren't a ton of explosive carries, a ton of 20+ yard gains. But what was happening was constant 5 yards, 6 yards, even 4 yards, putting yourself in advantage situations so you can roll out play action. You can just simply run the ball again. And that's what clearly the game plan from Nick Saban and Bill O'Brien is we're not going to let that team and that play caller get drive after drive after drive after drive and try and get some consistency going. And that's how you're going to beat Ole Miss. Just don't let them have the ball. It's the Patrick Mahomes thing in the NFL. Just don't let them touch the ball a ton. You got to make some plays. And you do, and you don't give them the ball, you're going to be off to, you're going to have a lot of success against Ole Miss. Leave your comments and reactions to the game below. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Alabama, Ole Miss, post-game recap live. I'm Zach Remilius. We're just going to hang out here, talk for a little bit more. You can follow me on Twitter at PsychoZ50. As long as you guys are commenting, we'll be talking up at least until the end of the Florida Kentucky games. Keep giving me tabs on that. I'm not trying to actively be. I'm keeping an eye on Stanford, Oregon, but I'm not trying to actively be staring at a game while we're talking to you guys. So long as you guys are chatting, I'm chatting. I'll talk college football to myself in the shower. So talking to you guys is just much more fun. Lots of impressive stuff today from Alabama as they played probably this is probably the best offense they're going to play all year. I mean, looking at the schedule, Texas A&M with Calzada, or however you pronounce his name, no one's worried about that. No one's scared of that. Tennessee or Mississippi State, we've seen the blueprint on Mississippi State. You know how to beat them. Alabama can certainly do what LSU did. Alabama's kicking game, it's fine. Riker's a dang good kicker. I mean, we haven't really seen the punter all that much. Yeah, Riker's 24 of 24 on extra points, 6 of 7 on field goals. He broke a streak of 24 straight makes. He's a good kicker. If he misses a kick, it's not, oh, Bama kickers, them again. No, this guy's a really, really good kicker. And they're not going to punt much, so I don't think, if Alabama has a bad punter, this punter might not be J.K. Scott, but I don't think having a bad punter is going to be the difference between Alabama winning a national championship or making a playoff or not. Fourth down. I think Alabama's good. We talked about this earlier. Someone else commented it up. I'm going to have to find it. I just think right now, at this point in the college football season, Georgia and Alabama are here. They're neck and neck. They're both excellent football teams on a collision course for Atlanta and the national championship. Everybody else is down here. No team is going to make that leap. And the teams we thought could make that leap just aren't there yet. Now, Ohio State looked impressive today. We'll talk about the Ole Miss thing here in a second. Penn State's looked pretty good at times. That was an excellent win for them. I just don't think they're on that level. As far as Ole Miss being overrated, no, I don't think so. We'll find out as the season goes along and they start playing Ole Miss and Arkansas, or Ole Miss starts playing Arkansas and Auburn and LSU. But no, I don't think they're overrated. I think they just played on the road to Georgia or Alabama, the two teams that will kicked the crap out of everyone this year, except for each other. I just think those are the only two good teams, or great teams. I think there's a bunch of good teams. I don't find them to be a lot of like top-notch teams in college football this year. This isn't most years where by like 2019, by week 8, Tua goes down. But before that, we were like, okay, the playoff's going to be Alabama, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State. There's your playoff. Cool. And then Tua went down and things changed a little, but they still had a chance against Auburn. Last year, it was clear it was Ohio State. It was Ohio. Holy cow. Oregon lost. Well, that's goodbye, Pac-12. It was Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Insert fourth team here. It turned out to be Notre Dame. I just think this is one of those years where it's two teams, not 3 or 4, which is fun. It provides a lot of intrigue for the regular season, but I think we all know who is going to come out on top. And so long to the Pac-12 in the playoff race. I think the ACC's down unless Wake Forest or NC State go undefeated, or Boston College, which would be quite awesome, to be honest with you. I don't care who you're a fan of. Seeing Wake Forest in the playoff would be absolutely amazing. But I think, I think both of those conferences are done. So, and the Big 12 might be done if Oklahoma loses anytime soon. But keeping back our focus to Alabama as they knock off Ole Miss 42-21 in Tuscaloosa. Give your thoughts and reactions below. Keep it coming. Keep the chats a-coming. Is Kyle Field and A&M at full strength any threat to Bama? I haven't heard. Is Haynes King playing next week? Someone let me know in the chat if Haynes King's going to play next week. Because if he's playing, still probably no. Oh, they're losing to Mississippi State? Okay, yeah, no. The only way Texas A&M is going to become a threat next week is if they get multiple defensive or special teams touchdowns. That's the only way. Like, they're not – it's just not a good team. It's not – they don't have the quarterback position figured out. There are so many programs in college football right now that let me phrase this because we're not going to talk about off the field stuff, but on the field need their version of Deshaun Watson. Clemson was a really, really good team. Clemsoning was a thing, I know, and Taj Boyd was a good quarterback. But Deshaun Watson took him to the next level. There's so many programs like that need that quarterback, and Texas A&M's one of them. Now, maybe Haynes King's that guy. I just don't like Penn State needs their version of Deshaun Watson. Oregon needs their version of Deshaun Watson. And we all thought it might be Justin Herbert, and it probably should have been Justin Herbert, but it just wasn't. So, no, I don't think without elite quarterback play or at least two defensive or special teams touchdowns, A&M's going to be any threat to the Crimson Tide next week. Should be a fun crowd, though. Kyle Field is an awesome place to watch the crowd. I mean, I would love to go to a game there. It's one of my top places to visit that I want to visit before I, when I'm still young enough and go hang out and, not be a 35-year-old bar hopping. I've been to Madison. I've been to Big Ten. I've been to Madison and I've been to Iowa City. And I got into the student section at Iowa because it was fun. I just walked in. Yeah, Urban Meyer also said, I am loyal to the Florida Gators, and that didn't work out too well. So maybe he's a liar. But no, if you watch the New England Patriots, that's that too. That's one of Bill Belichick's and Tom Brady's thing. The last 5 minutes of the second quarter, first 5 minutes of the third quarter. Because that's the time New England can go from a 3-point game to a 14-point game or a 17-point game. I don't know. However the math works out. As far as I know, yeah, Haynes King is still hurt. Let me put up their box score real quick because I didn't see anything. Yeah, nope, still Calzada. Is that game's 10-10 in the second quarter. I think he's still out for a couple weeks. I think they have Alabama, then they go to Missouri. I think he's out past the Missouri game, if I'm not mistaken. But someone did mention the Florida game. Let me pull that up real quick and even if Haynes King was healthy, I don't think I would trust a freshman quarterback to beat this Alabama team. It's just what's going to hurt that crowd for A&M too is Bryce Young and this offense has already seen a pretty gosh dang good crowd. That Florida crowd was awesome in the Swamp a couple weeks ago. So I don't think they'll have any issues. There's a couple road games after this because they go from Texas A&M, then they go to Mississippi State. Yeah, he did say it, a crack in his leg. I'm just saying what I've heard or read. When the first injury happened, and I haven't seen a whole bunch since then, it was like 7 to 8 weeks. It was like 4 to 6, missed most of the year, whatever. It was going to be until like the end of October. So, no, because Calzada's probably going to play next week. And if Alabama has issues with Zach Calzada, I'll be here next week, and we'll be talking about those issues because that's terrifying, considering how well they played against Matt Corral this week. But the difference is I think Texas A&M's defense isn't going to allow Alabama to sustain drive after drive, and 8-minute drive after 8-minute drive after 8-minute drive, and really, really let Bryce Young be comfortable. It's not gonna be that same like it was today for a long, and that's a better Ole Miss defense than last year. Obviously, look at the score; it was only 42-21, and a lot of those touchdowns from the Crimson Tide were on short fields. No phone open. What is Saban's message after beating Ole Miss so badly? My message would be, talk about what I just said. You scored 42 points, but a lot of that was on short fields, and Ole Miss's defense isn't great. Now, it's better than it was last year, but some high school defenses would be better than it was last year. That's your message. And Saban, Nick Saban's lost some games at Alabama, obviously. We talked about this. How many times have they gone the regular season undefeated? 2008, 2009, 16, 17. No, they lost Auburn. 18 and 20. So like 5 or 6 times. But they've never lost like a weird game in October. No, 2012 they lost to Texas A&M. They lost to Johnny Football. So I wouldn't be concerned about A&M or not A&M. I wouldn't be concerned about Alabama having a midseason dip. These kids are too talented. Plus the schedule kind of levels off. They got. Let me go back. They're at Mississippi State and then Tennessee, LSU, New Mexico State, Arkansas. After A&M next week. So you got, to start the year, ranked Miami. They're no longer ranked. At Florida, really good team. Ole Miss, probably a top 15 to 20 team. At Texas A&M, a top 20 team, I'd guess. But a team that was ranked in the top 10 to preseason. And then at Mississippi State, Tennessee, LSU, New Mexico State. And then you got Arkansas at home, and then you're at Auburn. So I think the schedule starts to level off a little bit. When is the bye week? The bye week is in between Tennessee and LSU. So in a couple weeks. I don't think Alabama will have any issues going the rest of the season undefeated. The big games before the season were the Florida game. Not even the Florida game, because we all didn't know what they were. It turns out they're pretty gosh dang good. And Ole Miss we thought might be difficult. And now we're like, okay, what? And at A&M, and that just doesn't seem like it's going to be the game we all thought it might be. Telling that game's not on 2:30 on CBS. Yeah, Auburn's won what 3 of 5 at Jordan Hare against Saban since 2013. Yeah, they won in 13, lost in 15, or 3-1, lost in 15, won in 17. Can't do math. 1 in 17, 1 in 19. Yeah, they're 3-1 since Gus Malzahn took over in 2013. That's a house of horrors. It seems to be for Alabama. So yeah, I mean it's a trap game for sure. I just with no Bix, I don't think. No, I did not mispronounce that. His name is No Bix. I just don't think Alabama should have any issues. Now, what I will say with this caveat is we are only in week 5, thinking NFL. Teams can get better week to week. That happens. But at this juncture, I don't see Auburn being much of a threat to the Crimson Tide. Not as long as No Bix is still around, because he's just, even when they beat him in 2019, he wasn't good. That was Mac Jones throwing 2 pick sixes. That was that problem. There we go. I wanted to show my name. Just going to be an interesting. College football in general, I know a lot of fans have complained about, well, every year it's Clemson, it's Ohio State, it's Alabama. And recently, Georgia's been hanging around. They've only made the playoff once. I think once, and they only deserve to make it once. You don't get to talk to me about 2018 or 2019 about Georgia making the playoff. But I do think this year we'll have some parity for spots 2 and 4. And Oregon just went down. So, who knows? Spots 2 and 4 are wide open. But I think we're really on a collision course for Alabama and Georgia in the national championship game and in Atlanta. And reminder, when we get to that game, it's tough to beat an elite team twice. So anything can happen. No matter, Alabama could lose the first game 24-7, and I still would be like, oh, the second game could be really good because look at LSU, and the last time we saw this happen, LSU and Alabama. LSU escaped with a 9-6 win. Alabama, and then just beats them to death in the national championship game, because to beat Alabama, you need a good quarterback, and George Jefferson at that time was not a good quarterback. OU in the winner of the Big Ten. Oklahoma looked. I watched bits and pieces of that game. Oklahoma looked. Actually, I watched a good chunk of that game. For those who don't know, I have one big TV in my room. I have a second smaller TV. That was my dad's. My brother uses it for the most part, but I get it on Saturdays. And then I have my laptop. So I have 3 games going on at once. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter kind of just seeing what's going on, or ESPN.com, just looking at like game casts and stuff, see if I need to turn to a game. And I have all the networks except Pac-12 Network because I don't want the Pac-12 Network. But Oklahoma today against Kansas State, a team that's beaten them 2 years in a row, looked better than they have, especially like against West Virginia and Nebraska and Tulane. So, yeah, I could see them making the playoff, but with how they've played so far, I'm going to have a tough time believing that they're going to get in. They're going to be undefeated. And if they're not undefeated, we've got some issues because they've got games against Iowa State. They're going to have a Big 12 title game. Texas and Bijan Robinson. Is it going to be a cakewalk like it was for Arkansas? And then the winner of the Big Ten. I think that depends. And today we saw it. Ohio State has the talent to murder everybody they play from here to the end of the season. And if that happens and they get to a Big Ten title game against a 1-loss or undefeated Iowa, because that Big Ten West is, or if Iowa wins the Big Ten West and undefeated and wins the Big Ten championship game. But I think Ohio State's probably still your best case scenario for the Big Ten to be competitive in the playoff because they do have the talent. They're like I've said, teams are allowed to get better, and their defense looked better against Rutgers, but Rutgers' offense isn't great. We'll know more about Ohio State as they take on Penn State, Michigan State, and Michigan. Or Michigan runs the table. So yeah, the winner of the Big Ten could absolutely do that, but I've also could see a scenario where like Ohio State beats Michigan and makes the Big 12 or loses to Penn State, beats Michigan, makes the Big Ten title game with 2 losses, and a whole bunch of just things happen. But what's intriguing is this is going to be an interesting race. But I think if Oklahoma loses one time, they're probably out because I don't think Cincy's going to lose a game, and if Cincy's undefeated, you can't keep moving the goalposts. You just can't. Like they deserve to make it. They went on the road and beat Indiana, who right now doesn't look that good, but they still have chances to beat Penn State tonight. They have a chance to beat Michigan, and they'll have a chance to beat Ohio State at home. So they have chances to get some big wins and really add to that resume. And they beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame, a top 10 Notre Dame team. And Notre Dame, if you look at their schedule, UNC, USC has a chance to win a lot of football games. So if they're undefeated and you have a one-loss Pac-12 champion, let's just say Oregon runs the table, you have a one-loss Big 12 champion, Oklahoma, and you have a one-loss Big 10 championship, you have to put Cincinnati in there. You have to. And then the 4th spot, yeah, it's just going to kind of depend. This is going to be a really interesting playoff race. Really, really interesting. Outside of Georgia and Alabama. I was excited for that Arkansas-Georgia game, too. Not that I thought Arkansas would compete super greatly. I think I picked like 31-10. But my God, was that just not a game at all. Just not a game. I mean, Stetson Bennett didn't even have to pass the ball. Oops, didn't mean to click on that comment. No comments clicked for me, please. Yeah, leave your comments, questions, and reactions to this game. I'm here to talk as long as you guys want to talk. If not, then probably go for like another 15 minutes, but we can go longer. I probably get off before the end of the Florida-Kentucky game. If OU craps the bed and everyone beats everyone else in the Big Ten, could you have? No, the only way Florida's going to get it is if they. No, Florida will have to run the table to get in. An undefeated Cincy would get in. I know it's a simulcast because I want the Alabama fans to be tuned in, and a little bit of a bigger audience here on the SEC. So you get some Ole Miss fans in here, Arkansas fans, Georgia fans, whoever just wants to talk about the SEC. Now that we've reached the later parts of the show, trust me, I know I'm on 2 channels. I was told to. And I figured out how to do it. It was very difficult. I had to click 2 things. So this is why I went to school. But going back to this comment, no, undefeated Cincy team would go to the playoff. Florida would have to beat Georgia and probably Alabama to make the playoff. Yes, you can look at Florida and go, look, they're a really, really good team. And, they'll beat Kentucky tonight potentially. And 2 losses this year would be to Georgia and Alabama. How can you punish them? You just can't have a 2-loss non-conference champ. Didn't even play in the conference championship game. Make the playoff. They're not going to put 3 SEC teams in. Since you would go in, you have to. If a 2-loss Florida team got in the playoff before Cincinnati, the group of 5 schools just quit the NCAA. As cool as that would be for the SEC, if teams not in the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, the Big 12 for the time being, Pac-12 should just leave and go play in their own thing. Go do like an FCS thing because that would be ridiculous. Yeah, we might have overrated Liam Cohen and Will Levis based on games against UL Monroe in Missouri. Might have overrated them just a little bit. Yeah, Todd Grantham, I know we give him a lot of flack, but he called a really good game against Alabama, and I don't think we give him enough credit for his game calling that game. Yeah, I just put that game on. I'll put Penn State, Indiana, I guess, on TV too, because if I can, why not? And today ending with Arizona State, UCLA. This was a good day of college football. We saw some really good games. Some good games that we thought were going to be blowouts. But yeah. The thing with Florida, too, but just speaking on Florida, what you have to be encouraged about if you're a Gator fan is Anthony Richardson's a better quarterback than Emory Jones. And Florida's still probably going to win 9 games. Maybe they lose tonight or they lose to LSU or something. But they still are probably going to win a ton of football games, and they're only going to get better. They did convert 10 of 16 on third down. However, after a lot of those were when that game was 21-3. After that game got 21-3, that defense did a heck of a job. A heck of a job. He called as good as a game as you're going to call against Alabama, especially when you go down 21-3 right away. Shutting down that Bama run game all day long. Bryce Young wasn't exactly Mr. Fantastic that day. And considering Florida's offense isn't anything special this year, which it was never going to be, you lose Kyle Trask, you lose Kyle Pitts, Tony. Were they really? That cannot be true. I mean, I trust you. I believe you, but holy cow. I thought I remember that. I remember that game very differently. Holy cow. Good call, Jet Mac. How did they punt so much then? It's 21-3 and out, 3 and out, punt to end the half, so that doesn't count. Touchdown, field goal, punt. Wow, guess they really held him to the field goal. Guess they held him to the field goal, and that really helped. Yeah, fair enough then. Fair enough, Florida. Fair enough. Yeah, no one's mistaking Todd Grantham as a great defensive coordinator, though. I mean, you have the memes, right? Like, oh, it's 3rd and 13, better send the house. And give up a dump off for 15 yards. Just one of those things. Yeah, fair enough. I guess I remember a little bit differently. We probably talked about it a couple weeks ago about how good Bama was on third down. Look, in the last couple of days, I learned I tore part of my hamstring. Slight tear. I don't need surgery or anything. I'll be fine. A couple job interviews. So hectic couple weeks, but yeah, good call. My fault. Completely my fault. I should have remembered that. Any Alabama fans in the chat? Florida fans, you can keep talking, of course. Nothing wrong with that. But give comments, reactions to today's game, next week's game, the season, the Heisman. I don't care. Can Bryce Young win the Heisman as Kentucky blocks a field goal? The Heisman chase, and they're going to return it for a touchdown. Okay, Kentucky. You know what? I looked at this drive sheet. Drives, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, anything about the Heisman race. Can Bryce Young win the Heisman? I don't think he's the favorite right now. I don't know who would be the favorite, though. It was Matt Corral coming into today, and I don't think it can be. Just due to him having kind of a meh day. Nah, he had a bad day. completed a high percentage of his passes. He had like an Alex Smith day, he had a decent day for like Greg McElroy. Check it down, but they just didn't have the run game. I don't know how your TV's so far behind because I'm streaming it, so I should be far behind, and the extra point is blocked. I just don't know what the Heisman race would look like because Georgia's defense can't get the Heisman. Sean Clifford's probably up for the Heisman right now, and Sean Clifford is having a good year, but that just kind of shows where the Heisman race is at. So I don't know. Bryce Young could win it. Gosh, my hair is a mess right now. That's why I'm wearing a hat. Bryce Young could win it, but he'll need big games soon, not just 20-26 for 241 and 2 touchdowns. He'll need some big games. Alabama beats Ole Miss 42-21. I'm Zach Cornelius here at the Voice of College Football SEC and the Voice of College Football Alabama. We're simulcasting this bad boy on Mark Rogers TV. You can, of course, catch our main channel, Voice of College Football. Mark does a heck of a job covering every team under the sun, from Florida State, which is a team that might be literally under the sun in Florida, and they're terrible, to Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Pac-12 teams. If you want some Pac-12 coverage, don't know why you would, but if you want it, it's there. I'm just kidding. A lot of great things about the Pac-12, just kind of a meme right now in college football. That is the thing, too. Oh, that's your other comment. This one hasn't loaded yet. There it is. It showed up on my phone when I'm just kind of making sure everything looks okay. Yeah, that's kind of the hard thing. Last week we did the same issue and the Mercer game. When you blow a team out, there's only so much to talk about because you can only be excited for so long before you go, all right, let's drink and let's get ready for Texas A&M. But when you're Alabama, do you really get ready for Texas A&M or LSU or Tennessee or Mississippi State? Or you just go, oh, God, can the Georgia games get here? But I'll be here every week. Try to go on. I'm not necessarily always going to be on this channel and the Alabama channel. I think for the most part, I'm just going to be on the Alabama channel. But we'll see. I just kind of do what Mark asks, and I do my best I can do. We've been going for about an hour. I'll give everybody till 7:15 to comment. Once 7:15 hits, any comments, questions, we'll stop and I'll just kind of answer those. So if you have any questions about anything, today's game, upcoming schedule, the Heisman race, the playoff, the SEC in general, you want to ask me why I'm wearing a Blues hat on an Alabama channel, go ahead and ask. It's all available for about 4 more minutes. Because like you said, nothing really else to ask about Alabama. They killed Ole Miss today. It wasn't a great game. But we move on. And Ole Miss will move on. And I'm sure Ole Miss will have a fine season. You know, they're still building off the Matt Luke era. They got Arkansas next week, and what should be that's going to be a big game for both teams. How do they rebound from today's disasters? And then they go at Tennessee, LSU, at Auburn, Liberty, and Hugh Freeze's return, A&M, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. So if we're just, looking at it now, they get Arkansas at home. If they win that game, should beat Tennessee, should beat LSU. It's just interesting. Yeah, and that's the scary thing if you're one of those teams, especially if you're Arkansas, because you have to go on the road, and you haven't played Alabama yet. Arkansas, this could be the best Arkansas team we see Sam Pittman have until he really gets his recruiting going. With Grant Morgan, Bumperpool, Catalan, Traylon Burks, they just have a lot of talent. but it's a bunch of upperclassmen talent, and they have a lot of returning seniors. A lot of returning seniors. And if you lose next week to Ole Miss, they could still be a really, really good team. Like, they'll beat Missouri. They'll beat, I don't even know who else they have on their schedule. Well, obviously the SEC West. I don't remember the rest of their schedule. But they'll say they're 4-2 in conference, and then they lose to, or 4-2, 1-2 in conference. They beat, then, Auburn comes to town, and, all of a sudden, oh no, you could lose that one. You got UAPB, you'll win that one. You'll beat Mississippi State, but then you have at LSU and at Alabama. This could be a really, really awesome Arkansas team that goes 8-4 or 9-3. Such is life in the SEC West. Such is life. But Arkansas just hasn't been able to have one of those dream seasons in a long time where they're like one win away from a national championship. A lot of teams have had those seasons recently. Utah, Missouri. Well, Missouri's was like 8 years ago. Auburn's had a couple of those seasons. They got to a national championship. Mississippi State was a game away from the playoff probably in 2014. But, such is life. A couple more minutes. Get your comments, questions in. And then once those are done, we're going to log off here. That was a nice little play. Sean Clifford, touchdown Penn State. Go ahead and log off. You guys enjoy the rest of your night. 7:15. We are going to start counting down and getting on out of here. I got to take my medicine for my leg because my leg's actually really starting to hurt. Yeah, with the injury to McClellan, probably just going to be the Brian Robinson show with Royland in there quite a bit. Brian took 33 carries today. Brian Robinson Jr. Let me be accurate here. Yeah, you're probably just going to see a lot of the Brian Robinson Jr. show with Roydell Williams, excuse me. I really need to take my meds. It's just going to be those two, and see what happens with Jason McClellan as the season wears on. Offensive line looked a lot better today, so we'll see. I'd imagine it's the Brian Robinson show. What would help the running game is if Bryce Young occasionally took 6 yards and used some of that mobility, but alas, he hasn't. So I think I am about done. Like I've mentioned 3 times in the last couple of minutes, I need to go take my medicine. And just, been going for about an hour. Florida, I think, will be doing a show here before too long. Thank you all so much for being here. This was a blast. It's easy to talk about college football no matter what happens. And I talk to myself, but with you guys, it is so much easier. There's more conversation to be had. It's not me arguing in my head about myself, about things happening, usually about the SEC. So thank you guys all so much for being here, taking some time out of your night, and having a great time. Hope you guys all had a great time. Hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. I am Zach Ermilius. You can find me on Twitter if you want thoughts about movies, college football, St. Louis Blues hockey, St. Louis Cardinals baseball. Cardinals made the playoffs. Let's go. Should point out, if the Cardinals are playing next Saturday, I'll be watching the Alabama game and the Cardinal game. And I will do a post-game show, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on the Cardinal game. So if I seem a little distracted, I'm letting you know 1 week out. That's why. You can find me on Twitter, PsychoZ50. Thank you to Mark Rogers. Follow him at Mark Rogers TV. Follow the main channel, Voice of College Football. You can subscribe here at Voice of College Football SEC, or if you're watching on the other part of the simulcast, Voice of College Football Alabama We'll be here week in, week out. We're going to start trying to do a couple more midweek shows. Just kind of see what I can put together, to be honest. And thank you all so much. I said that a lot, but I really do mean it because, talking for an hour to myself into my laptop just isn't fun, especially when I could be watching games, and you guys make it fun. So thank you so much, Jet, for being here all freaking hour 5 we went today. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. If you're an Alabama fan, roll Tide. If you're an Ole Miss fan, it'll get better. It will. This is not losing to the best team or second best team in the country on the road isn't the end of the world. You guys enjoy your Saturday nights. Peace out.